Madame Gallifet's eyes darted across the ballroom, wild and searching. One by one, she saw the elites of Saint-Domingue fall. Men who had once toasted their fortunes, women who had gossiped on her balconies. All of them now screaming, slipping, dying. But her eyes stopped when she saw her daughter, Isabelle. She stood at the far end of the room, her pale gown catching the candlelight, like snow beneath fire. Her face was frozen with horror, and beside her, Jacques, her soon-to-be husband, was nowhere to be seen. Madame Gallifet scanned quickly and spotted him. Jacques, along with a handful of young men, guests dressed in fine coats and powdered wigs, were gathering anything they could find to fight back. One held a silver candelabra, another a fire iron, another a chair leg snapped in desperation. They looked like boys playing at war. With a yell, Jacques and the others charged, but their bravado meant little. The rebels met them with ease. These were not field hands. They were warriors, men who had trained in the hills of Mount Ayiti, masters of guerrilla combat. They moved like smoke, ducking and weaving, striking at openings with surgical precision. It was not a brawl, it was a dance. A deadly, elegant dance. The colonists swung and missed. The rebels circled them like wolves, and in moments the blood of the brave and foolish spilled onto the marble. Jacques fell dead last, his weapon knocked from his hand, his final gasp lost in the roar of the rebellion. Madame Gallifet's chest seized with panic. Her daughter was alone, her instincts kicked in, no longer as a noblewoman, but as a mother. Her only goal was to reach Isabelle, to pull her from this nightmare. But between them stood dozens of panicked bodies, all surging toward the rear of the ballroom. Yet that escape route had become another trap. At the far doors, the same enslaved women Madame Gallifet had noticed earlier now stood tall, blocking the way. No longer carrying trays or smiling with lowered eyes, they now wielded butcher knives and meat cleavers. Tools once used to prepare soufflés and roast duck, now soaked in blood. The guests begged, pleaded, but the women held firm, snarling, screaming back. "Turn back or we carve you slow," one shouted, brandishing a carving blade. Madame Gallifet stumbled in disbelief. She recognized the woman as Odette, the same servant who had sewn lace into her corset that very morning. They had been docile, soft-spoken, controlled. Now, they were monsters of vengeance. She pushed forward, shoving past weeping guests, ignoring the screams that surrounded her. Her heart pounded in her ears as she pressed toward her daughter. And as she moved, she thought of her aristocratic cousin living in France, Colette de Vaupry. Colette, once elegant and proud, had been swept up in the chaos of Paris. While visiting a jeweler with her husband, she had been caught in a mob of white French revolutionaries. The banners of freedom and vengeance flew high from the white commoners who felt oppressed by the wealthy and royals. Colette had been dragged into the street, her dress torn, her face beaten by hands that once bowed to her. She was thrown into a prison, once the stronghold of aristocratic power, now overtaken by the people. Her husband had bought her freedom with coin and cunning, bribing a guard who had grown tired of blood. Colette survived, but barely. She wrote of it in trembling ink, telling of noblewomen shaved bald and paraded through streets, of executions done by crowds too poor to afford proper rope. Even Queen Marie Antoinette had been caged, and Madame Gallifet had thought herself safe, an ocean away, cocooned in wealth. But as she neared Isabelle, pushing through a press of blood-soaked guests and broken furniture, she saw clearly what she had once denied. Saint-Domingue was having its own revolution, and it would be far more terrifying than anything France had ever known.